Hey everybody, and thanks for stopping by for part 2 of our section on these two pivotal events in classical Greek history, the Persian Wars and the Peloponnesian War. Now, last time around, we covered the Persian Wars. Today's screencast is going to cover the Peloponnesian War. So, what exactly will we be looking at here? Well, first, for starters, what is the Peloponnesian War? We'll define that. We'll find out exactly what it is. What was the Peloponnesian War? And then, of course, when you study any war, what's the first thing you have to look at? The causes. Why did the war begin? And we'll do the same for the Peloponnesian War. Why did the Peloponnesian War begin? Then we'll get into some of the basic events of the Peloponnesian War. No major battles this time, just really kind of big picture, low-level stuff. And then ultimately we'll figure out who won. The last thing that we'll cover is the aftermath of the war. And when you study any war, that's, again, one of those important things that you need to look at. Not just the causes, not just who won, but what's the long-term impact? What did this war accomplish or not accomplish? What did it mean for the people at that time and for the long term? So what are the long-term impacts that the Peloponnesian War has for all of Greece? Thus, without further ado, let's go ahead and begin. So the Peloponnesian War, what is it? Well, the Peloponnesian War was a brutal civil war fought between, for 27 years, fought between the two most powerful polises in all of ancient Greece. That would be Athens and Sparta. And this nasty 27-year, brutal, bloody civil war would embroil nearly all of Greece in that conflict. And these two polises had been rivals for years, for centuries. And this destructive conflict is the real culmination of that rivalry. But why did the Peloponnesian War begin? Well, to understand why the Peloponnesian War began, we have to go back to the end of the Persian Wars, because the Peloponnesian War erupts out of the formation of something called the Delian League. See, at the end of the last Persian invasion, the Delian League was formed as a defensive alliance, namely by Athens. The Persians had attacked Greece in massive numbers twice in the course of 2 decades, and Athens had bore the brunt of the attack both times, and they knew that if the Persians ever came again, the only way Greece would survive would be if they were united. And so Athens proposed this defensive alliance, a unified alliance of Greeks that would band together and fight in the event of another Persian attack. It's sort of like the ancient Greek version of NATO or any other defensive treaty alliance. And the way that it was supposed to work was all the members of the Delian League would pour money into a common treasury on this tiny little island called Delos, hence the name Delian League. And that money would fund a combined allied Greek army. And Athens, being the principal member of the Delian League, would provide military leadership for the combined allied army. And seeing as Athens had the most powerful navy, they would also provide the navy for the Delian League in the event that the Persians ever attacked again. And so it's a very, very fine idea. Much of Greece buys into the idea, joins with Athens in its Delian League, except, of course, Athens' old nemesis, Sparta. Sparta refuses to join the Delian League, and they sort of hang out on their own for a while. But it won't always be that way. We'll find out how that's going to change. And so what starts out as a really good idea, a defensive alliance to protect against a future Persian threat, it really begins to change soon after. And a lot of it has to do with this fella pictured over there on the right, a guy by the name of Pericles. Now, at the time in Athens, Pericles is the most powerful and well-known citizen. He's a top military general. He's a top political leader. He's continually elected to those generalships year after year after year. So he's clearly a very powerful and important person in the polis. And as far as the Delian League is concerned, Pericles slowly begins to make changes that are going to alter what the Delian League was originally intended to be. And it starts off slowly. See, at first, Pericles just insists that all the members of the Delian League use Athenian coins. I mean, Athens is the biggest economy in Greece. Everybody trades with and through Athens. It makes sense. Let's all use Athenian coins. Okay, fine. Well, then he takes it a step further, and later on, he demands that all members of the Delian League just follow Athenian law. I mean, hey, look, Athens, we've got the best legal system anyway. You may as well follow our laws. Oh, and by the way, all major criminal trials should be held in Athens, too. All right, this is getting a little bit fishy now. Additionally, Pericles had this nasty habit of sending the Athenian military into other polises who were members of the Delian League to settle their political disputes. So if there's social problems or political problems, the Athenian military shows up in what is supposed to be an independent sovereign city-state to, quote, deal with their problems. What's obviously happening is that Athens is taking control over the Delian League. The Delian League is quickly changing from a defensive alliance into an Athenian empire. But that's not even the worst of it. The worst of it may have been the way in which the Athenians misused the money that was supposed to go to funding the combined army of the Delian League. You see, during the last Persian invasion, Xerxes and his army burned the city of Athens to the ground. They destroyed it. They left it as almost nothing. And now, with Pericles in charge, they had begun the massive project of rebuilding Athens, and rebuild it they did, bigger, stronger, more artistic, and more beautiful than it ever had been before. And the centerpiece of the entire project of the rebuilding of Athens was the Parthenon, the most well-known work of architecture in Athens, and really the most well-known work of architecture in all of Greece. But here's the kicker. Where's the money for this rebuilding coming from? Oh, you could probably guess it. It's coming from the treasury of the Delian League. Yes, that's right. The Athenians are taking the money, namely Pericles, that is supposed to go towards defending all of Greece, and they're using it to rebuild Athens, to rebuild the city, and to build the Parthenon. And this is something that in its time would have cost such an astronomical amount of money that we can only imagine. Imagine how much it cost for the Dallas Cowboys to build their football stadium. Imagine the hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars that are poured into something like that, and that's what the Athenians spent, stuff that was supposed to be spent on the defense for the Delian League. And the Parthenon is this big temple complex built to honor their patron goddess Athena, and it's built on top of the Acropolis of Athens. And I mean, to this very day, it still stands, and it's still a symbol of Greece and a symbol of Athens. But they kind of built it in a very immoral, unethical, and unsavory way. And so, as you can imagine, the members of the Delian League are not too happy with this. Oh, and the rest of Greece, they're kind of growing to resent Athens as well. So they're not doing a good job of making and keeping friends here. Now, meanwhile, Sparta, if we remember, they didn't join the Delian League. As a matter of fact, Sparta kind of played the game of, well, Athens, whatever you can do, we can do better. And Sparta created their own defensive alliance called the Peloponnesian League. And suddenly all these folks who were unhappy with Athens switched sides. They left the Delian League and joined Sparta in the Peloponnesian League. You know, and Sparta and Athens had always been rivals, didn't like each other, but now Sparta is also incredibly jealous of Athens because Athens has grown very powerful, even more wealthy and more beautiful than ever before. So you have this deadly combination of Spartan jealousy towards Athens and Greek anger towards Athens' actions. And you've created this tinderbox, this powder keg of Greece that is just waiting for a spark to set the whole thing off into war. You have two distinct sides sort of lining up, ready for a fight. And as this war is really sort of on us, and you can kind of see, looking at the map there, how the allegiances and alliances changed in Greece. And as this war is coming towards us, a lot of people in Greece begin to do sort of an assessment of strength of both sides. You know, the side of Sparta has the clear advantage in terms of army. Sparta and its allies have a much, much larger army. And of course, we know of the reputation of the great Spartan military and their military society. That's an advantage for them. But Athens, for their part, is wealthier, much more economically strong, and has a larger population. Furthermore, Athens possesses something that Sparta doesn't have. And that's a navy. The powerful Athenian navy is a huge advantage to Athens because Sparta has no navy whatsoever. So when the Peloponnesian War does finally begin in 431 BC, a lot of people look at this and they think, hey, Athens may not have the strongest army, but with their navy, they might be able to hold out and win against Sparta. And that's the backdrop we have as war finally breaks out between these two legendary rivals. And so it does seem that that Athens can hold out and beat Sparta. That is until tragedy strikes. Within the first year of the war, a disaster befalls Athens. In 430 BC, a horrible plague strikes the city of Athens, killing 1/3 of its entire population. It's speculated that the plague may have been typhus. I'm not sure if it's bubonic plague like in the Middle Ages, but either way, it was pretty nasty stuff. 1/3 of the population was killed, and you think about what that does to Athens' economic strength and military strength. And on top of that, among the dead is Pericles, the city's military leader and top general, as well as Pericles' son. This cripples Athens and really hurts their ability to fight the war. But despite this, Athens is able to fight on. Why? Because of their powerful navy. So as a result, the war drags on for another 26 more years. There's a few periods of brief peace here and there, but largely, it's another 26 years of fighting. And it's the Athenian navy that allows them to hold out and continue to fight. Well, Sparta, for their part, by now are desperate to defeat Athens. And to defeat Athens, to achieve that goal that they want, they're about to make a deal that's going to turn the tide of the war, something that you never would have thought Sparta would have ever done 2 generations ago. And that is to make an alliance with Persia. Sparta makes an alliance with the Persians. The Spartans cut a deal with Persia. Persia, of all people, the very enemy that Sparta and Athens fought together against 2 generations earlier. Sparta cuts a deal with the Persians, and the deal is this. Persia will give Sparta money and provide them with that thing they need to beat Athens, a navy. And in return for this money and navy, Sparta promises that when the war is over, that Sparta will give to Persia all the Greek city-states of Ionia. In the eyes of many Greeks, this is a deal with the devil. But it is a deal that works for the Spartans. With their Persian-funded navy, the Spartans turn the tide of the war. They defeat the Athenians in naval battles at sea, defeat the Athenian navy entirely, leaving the city of Athens open to attack. And now the Spartans lay siege to the city of Athens, cutting it off from all sides. The siege goes on for months. And with the people of Athens dying of starvation and dying of disease, the Athenians realize they have no choice now but to surrender. In 404 BC, Athens surrenders to Sparta, bringing the Peloponnesian War to a close. In the long struggle against its great rival, Sparta is victorious. Now, Sparta may have won the war, but in the aftermath of the war, we find that the conflict leaves disastrous consequences for all of Greece. You see, fighting in the war destroys cities, it destroys vineyards, farm fields, orchards, and we remember things like grapes and olives, for olive oil and wine are a huge part of the economy in Greece. So the war severely damages the economy in all of Greece. With a bad economy, we suddenly see very high unemployment throughout Greece. High unemployment, especially among the young male population of Greece. And these young men who can find no jobs in Greece, well, they leave and they go to the closest place where they can find jobs. And that's Persia. And you know what job these young men do when they get to Persia? They join the military and they become mercenaries. Greek men whose ancestors fought for freedom against Persia now go to Persia and join the Persian military as a result of this destructive civil war. But worst of all, though, may be that the Greeks seem to have given up on democracy after the war. Instead, it's might makes right. They try to rule through force. And at first, Sparta tries to rule all of Greece, until they're later challenged by the city of Thebes. And then in a new civil war, Thebes defeats Sparta. Yeah, you heard that right. I said that. Thebes defeated Sparta in a new civil war. Well, then Thebes tries to rule Greece themselves until they too are challenged and defeated. And the cycle of war continues over and over again, leaving Greece weak, divided, and unable to defend itself. And where have we heard this story before? Back in the Mycenaean days when they went through the civil war and were weak, divided, and unable to defend themselves. And what happened to them? They fell victim to a rising power in the north, the Dorians. And this time around, Greece is leaving itself weak and unable to defend itself against a new rising power, the Macedonians. So even though Sparta won the war, technically, all of Greece turns out to be the loser. So what have we looked at today, boys and girls? Well, we looked at the Peloponnesian War. What is the Peloponnesian War and how did it begin? We looked at the beginning. We talked about sort of the big picture events of the war and ultimately who won. And then finally, we just wrapped up with the long-term impacts that the Peloponnesian War had for all of Greece. So the next time that we meet, be prepared to discuss all of these topics. And until that time, I bid you farewell.